Welcome to Corralling the Chaos podcast, where we talk publicly about the things you're worried about privately. My name is Angela Leah, and I'm your host. This is the event industry podcast for companies and crew, where we're going to dive deep into things like, what does our industry need that it just doesn't have? What are the things you want to know, but you're just too afraid to ask? And what are the biggest opportunities ahead for our industry? We're going to go deep, and nothing is off limits. Hello and welcome back to Corralling the Chaos. We are going to talk today about company growth, community, and the employee experience in our industry. And we have a very special guest to help us do that today. Charles Eide is the founder and CEO of EideCom, which is a full-service production and creative agency based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They produce large-scale corporate meetings and events such as Minnesota Vikings Draft Party. That sounds fun, by the way. They also were awarded Best Places to Work by Inc. magazine and also placed on Inc. 5000's list of fastest growing companies. Congrats on that, by the way. Charles's passion for events first began in high school when he started DJing school dances. He's an entrepreneur, true thought leader, innovator, and he's an industry expert dedicated to growth and community. He's also committed to creating a positive and creative culture for his employees, as evidenced in being one of the best places to work, while providing unlimited potential for their careers. So welcome, Charles, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Angela. It's really good to meet you and all the team at Lasso and the podcast. This is really great. It's a nice treat considering that it's like -10 out here in Minnesota, which I don't have any words for that. I think everybody knows what that means. It's terrible
I can't
outside.
even fathom what I mean, when you say it's -10, do people go outside? And I mean, I guess you have to, but like I can't even imagine what that feels like.
Yeah, okay, so imagine walking outside to let your dog out or go get the mail, and it feels like, a million needles on your skin.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's unbelievable how cold it is. I wonder to myself every year about this time in January. I go, why am I here again?
Yeah.
And why do we stay here? And then summer rolls around, and we
And
all
then you
forget
remind.
about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the summers in Minnesota are incredible. I mean, they're some of the most beautiful. Our sunsets aren't till like almost 10 o'clock at night in the summer. So
Wow. That's
I mean,
unbelievable.
I think it's just we all have amnesia and we can't remember more than 6 months of pain. So then we arrive at fall and we're like, what's
Yes.
coming again? I don't remember.
Yep. We're conditioned to just forget about it. That's right. Well, I'm from Florida, so I can't fathom -10. I mean, I now live in Atlanta, which is very similar to Florida, except we at least get some seasons. But
Yeah.
well, you're great to join us. Don't go outside today unless you have to.
Sometimes you open your weather app and it says like -18 feels like -50. And you're like, oh, okay. So I'm not going anywhere today. Got it.
And I think I heard today, not to date our podcast, but I think I heard today there's 6 more weeks of winter coming. Just saying.
Oh,
Sorry to tell you that. Sorry to be the
no.
bearer of bad news, but
I
it's coming.
believe it. I believe it because, our Februaries here are also terrible. So, the good news is by the time you reach January and you realize how terrible it is, it's going to start turning
Yeah,
within 8 weeks
it'll
or
turn.
or
Yep.
12 weeks or
The
something
beauty
like
of our
that.
seasons. That's right. Well, you're great to be here. I really, really appreciate it. And so where I wanted to go first was, you talk about being dedicated to growth and community. What does that mean to you? What does that look like?
I think humans desire connection, right? We desire connection with other people. At least
Mhm.
most people do. And if
Yeah.
you think about, the workplace and how much time someone spends working, that those are some of the most precious hours of your day, your week, your month, your life. And so I have this philosophy that if you create a community of people, a culture of people that you're going obviously around core values and things like that, you're going to create a place that people feel happy, and it doesn't so much feel like work as it does feel
Yeah.
like just life and something that you feel connected to. And the days of punching in and feeling miserable, you don't have to do that anymore because culture can be at the center of a company's uh, you know being.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's something to that word connection. I personally believe we were made with that in mind. We are made to connect with each other. But it's also not just being connected to each other, but it's connected, to your point, to a purpose. And I think when a company can define the purpose, give them something that's bigger beyond themselves, whether it's giving clients a great experience or helping to grow a business or whatever it is, and doing it with a group of people that you're connected to, that's it's really hard to break a bond like that when you are in the trenches with these people that you're looking left and right and you're fighting through it day in and day out for something bigger than yourself. That's pretty powerful.
Yeah, and I think all of that is centered around this idea of core values, right? Our company, we have 4 core values that are central to who each person kind of has in their kind of like if you think about a computer, their motherboard, it's not something that can change in somebody, um, at least immediately. So that's why when we hire, and we've had a lot of incredible people join our team, and I think it's because our core values, we have positive, creative, effective, and team player, and those are things, those are words that basically define what makes success or failure here. And so it makes it very easy for somebody to be like, I resonate with that, and the other people here do too, or I don't resonate with that. This isn't a good place for me.
Yeah.
Helps you make a better environment for everybody.
Yeah, and being intentional about what that is with those 4 core values versus we're just trying to be good, but being specific on this is what it means, it's positive and all the things that you mentioned. So I think that's great. And for those of you companies out there that haven't invested in the exercise of creating your mission, your vision, your values, I highly encourage you to do that. It is it's just so well worth it. It dictates everything. I mean, our core values at Lasso, we do the same thing. And that's part of our hiring process too. It's part of our performance reviews. It's part of everything we talk about should point back to one of those values. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and
Um,
I wanted to show you something. I'm just gonna grab. I'm sorry. Oh, now I'm knocking things over in my office, as you can hear.
can't
I
take you anywhere.
I'm a big fan of reading. I know in today's day and age, there's podcasts, there's audiobooks, there's all this stuff. I like listening to books, but I also keep physical copies on my desk. And
Yeah.
there's two really like central books to me that have shaped and molded that for me. One of them is this one called Amplify Your Influence by a guy named Rene Rodriguez. He speaks all over the world on influence, and influence is everything, no matter where you sit in a company, whether you're the owner, the founder, all the way down to someone who's brand new. Your influence has everything to do with your success. And this book really
Yeah.
helped me with that. But back to the core values, Angela, the book Traction by
Mhm.
Gino Wickman, this book is what changed my life and changed our company for good. And in there's an exercise in the book Traction on how do you come up with your core values. And I'll tell you what, this book, I keep a bunch of these on my shelves so that I can give them out to people, because it changed my life to be able to understand that core values are so central to the success of a culture and to an
Yeah.
organization.
The values are the roadmap. I love that. So the book, for those of you that are going to pick it up, I know I am, is called Traction. And I'd love to hear the stories that come out of that because I think a lot of companies uh, cut that corner. And I think it's really important, especially in today's times when everybody's competing for talent, not people. Um, People are drawn to companies who understand what their North Star is, have a path to do it, and understand the values it's going to take that we all need to embody to kind of hit that. So I think that's great. But how do you create at EideCom a positive and creative culture outside of these core values that you talk about? But like, I think positive culture, right? Like, we get that. But, like, what does a creative culture look like?
Well, I think it's important to note that when you are intentional about the values and the things that people have kind of inside of them when you hire them, you're going to naturally see those things come out in the workplace, in the work itself, as work comes to them. So, when I think about positivity, this is something we talk about regularly. Is like it's so easy to be negative. Just turn on the news for 1 minute. I have a friend in the news business and they have a saying, and their saying is, if it bleeds, it leads. And you're like, oh my gosh, no wonder people are dealing with mental health and
Yeah.
sadness and depression and all this stuff. So we try and talk about like what are things you can do today to remain positive through any situation. It's easy to be positive when things are great. It is not easy to be positive when things are terrible. And when we went through COVID, just like everybody did, we had to have that conversation. Guys, I know this is all horrific right now, but how do we stay positive? And
Yeah.
instead of losing our entire company, we were down a little bit, but for a company in the events industry, we didn't get hit as hard as most because we kept people together and we stayed dedicated and positive. Now, you
Yeah.
asked about creative. That's another one that's really interesting because if you think about it, we all have things that guide our, oh, you can do this, you can't do that, or we don't have a software that will do that, so we can't do that.
Mhm.
So every single Monday, we have this meeting called the WIN meeting. It's an all company meeting. What is needed? Win. At that meeting, at the end, we have this time where it's like, what do you need team players for this week?
Mhm.
And when it comes to me, I always say the same thing. I'm sure people roll their eyes by now. No, nobody rolls their eyes. But I say the same thing, and that is if you need resources to be more creative, you need a software, you need a I don't know, you need a bigger monitor, you need a better computer, you need
Mhm.
whatever it is. I don't care what it is. If there's something that's holding you back creatively, if you need to go to a class, you need inspiration, tell us. We're here to resource you so that you can be the best that there is out there. And so we
Yeah.
don't, I mean, we might spend a lot more money on our people and investing in their tools and their minds, but the returns are incredible. Our clients get much better results because there's no limit on what people can do here. We say, hey, whatever you need. You want a new program, you want Cinema 4D, great, go for it. You need classes for that too? All right, let's find some great classes. Do you need
Yeah.
to go to an industry event and network with people who are, doing what you're doing? Great, let's go. You should go to that. And then
Yeah.
we pay for it. So to me, it's all about how do you invest in people and remove the natural limitations that we put on ourselves and give them the authority to not have constraints on themselves.
It's so interesting that you're talking about that because I feel like our industry has significantly evolved in that way. We started last, so I don't know, 10 years ago. And I feel like when we started, we were like trying to carry this flag. We always say every event experience is only as good as the people who make it happen. It's the people. And if you remember 10 years ago, it's all about the gear. It's all about the gear. I mean, websites, companies were leading with, look at our cool gear, look at our cool gear. And I think our industry has really shifted because they realize it's the people operating the gear. It's the people with a creative vision. It's not about the gear. It is about the people. And I think it's been really encouraging to see companies really shift their focus. I mean, now they've been forced to, quite honestly. But even before the pandemic, I think people are starting to realize it is about the people and the talent you have. I mean, especially as a service-based business, it's not about the assets, it's not about the physical assets, it's about the human capital assets. And so it's just been fun to watch that evolution and the shift in thinking and the shift in talking and the shift in investments even in doing those things to make sure we're getting the right talent in the industry and within our company. So I think that's great.
You bring up a good point, and when we first started our business, I didn't have the money to buy all that expensive equipment. I said, all I've got is, I've got other companies that can supply that stuff.
Yeah.
Not today, we own our own equipment, but at that time when we were starting out, I didn't have anything. But I realized that I didn't need the equipment. What I needed was I needed the customer to believe in me and our team. And the equipment, I mean, look, I'm going to tell you right now, no surprise, nobody owns everything. Some
Right.
people own, more than others, but at the
Yeah.
same time, you're absolutely right. The equipment is small potatoes compared to the experience. There's a really great, I'm going to bring it back to another book. There's a really great book, this guy named Lee Cockrell. He was the guy who designed the Disney customer experience, and before that, Marriott. And we all
Hmm.
know both of
Yeah.
those organizations have incredible customer service. He wrote a book called The Customer Rules. And
Hmm.
that book is a book that we study at least once a year here as a team collectively because it's all about the customer experience. How do we make the customer feel better?
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I feel like the rising tide raises all ships. guys, we need to get better at customer service. I know you've got equipment and I know you've got people and I know your schedule is busy like everyone else's, but it doesn't mean that you can be a jerk. And I will say that especially in production, it's easy to get overwhelmed when you're stuck in a ballroom from 6 a.m. to midnight, 4 days, 5 days in a row, and it's easy to get crabby. But if you keep customer service at the center of your mind and you go, you know what? I'm here to serve the customer. You're going to find out real quick that the customers are going to stick with you and come along with you on that journey. And I mean, our client turnover is almost zero. And it's because we are so intentional about their experience being a connected one that we take care of them and they feel good. And if you can do that, people don't. I will say this: people don't necessarily remember what you say, they remember how you make them feel. People remember how you make them feel. And if you can take what is already a chaotic part of this person's life who's organizing the event and make it better, you are gonna win every day of the week.
They also don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think that goes back to that customer relationship because you're right. Customers are not buying based on a commodity. They're buying because of the talent, the care that you're showing to them, which I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a minute. Then we'll move on. But I would love to see our industries stop talking about labor. Like you will be amazed when you start proposing talent, when you get to the pricing, don't say labor, say talent. You're giving them talent to produce their show. It's not labor. Labor is like a body, a warm body. Like, so I just, if we can shift our thinking, I think we could just, I think there's just more we can do. And we have to educate the client and remind them you're not buying labor, you're not buying gear, you're buying execution and talent.
Mm.
And, all right, I'm done. I'm off my
I
soapbox.
love that. I
We
just
can move
stole that
on.
from you. I am changing it on all of our proposals now. We're changing it to talent, not labor. I love that.
Yeah.
It's so true. And if you
Yeah.
really believe in your product, that's exactly right. Now, sometimes when you have to go into like a union house where it's
Yeah.
actual like union labor,
Yeah.
that offers up its own challenges. But
Yeah.
still, those people have talent and we
That's
need to
right.
continue to support them too.
That's right. That's right. Well, I want to talk about your Inc. 5000. So I know you guys grew by over 200%. What do you contribute that to? How'd you guys
Oh
do that?
man, it has been a tremendous amount of work. COVID, we all had a dip last year from 2021 to 22. We had another major hike in growth. And the thing is, when you do that type of thing, it's easy for it to fall apart if it's not structured properly. And what I mean by that is, do you have your core values set? Is the people in this book Traction, they talk about the people component and how are people being managed? There's this meeting you have with each department. It's called an L10 or level 10 meeting. And that meeting has specific agenda related items that each person comes to the meeting with a scorecard metric, so like somebody's going to in the sales meeting, somebody might be responsible for how many dollars in proposed do they have out, how many new relationships did they make this week, things like that.
Yeah.
In a production meeting, it might be like, how much do we have in damaged and missing equipment? Hopefully that
Yeah.
number is zero. So like the scorecard at the level 10 meeting, and that happens weekly, allows you to really stay on top of the scalability. So as you integrate new players on the team and scale, not only have you attracted them with core values and gotten them really excited, you're putting them into basically a scalable management system that allows them to immediately get immersed in the culture of the company while knowing what's important, what are the measurables, what are the key performance indicators
Yeah.
for them, so that they can have success and they can go, I started here and I see a career path that's really beneficial for me here.
That's a perfect segue. That's actually another question I wanted to ask you. What does a typical career path in our industry look like to you? And I'm going to tell you, I'm asking because I don't think our industry has done a good job communicating what a career in our industry could mean. A lot of people ask, well, how can I break into it? But we only sell kind of the entry, right? We don't sell the whole vision, the whole career path, how you can make a great living doing cool things. And so like what does a typical career path in our industry look like? And then as a follow-up to be thinking about how do we best facilitate that as an industry?
These are challenges that we have to work with every single day. And when you think about getting started in any new industry, whether it's events or anything else, you have to ask yourself, what type of involvement do you want, right? Do I want the safety and security of working full time at a company, right? If you don't want that and you want the flexibility of being a freelancer, the freelancer community can be really challenging because there is no structure or path, and it really doesn't lead to any sort of growth, if you will, aside from, oh, well, I did a bigger event this year than I did last year, or I did bigger events. So I think it all comes down to understanding anytime you're new to an industry, learning is your first and most important thing, right? And that comes down to who are you talking to and meeting with? What are you reading and putting into your mind? And what are you doing to be deliberate about, hey, next year I want to be at this point, right? A lot of times we're not super deliberate. And it comes down to being intentional with those things. So, one, you got to pay your dues, right? You can't just jump in and let's say you want to be a lighting designer. You can't just jump in and think someone's going to hire you to do a stadium for 25,000 people because you can do it on a CAD program at home on your laptop. It isn't going to happen, right? This is a business of trust. And so it starts with small stuff. If you're going the freelance path, you're going to start on those assistant and smaller roles, right? If it starts inside a company, again, it's more of a junior level position. And this is why usually the new talent in our industry starts out pretty young, right? Because it doesn't pay a whole lot to be learning, right? And then as you gain your skills and you see a forward path, you kind of settle into what you want to do, right? I've seen people that have gone from I'm going to be a lighting designer to be like, lighting's great, but I actually really enjoy the video and cutting and switching and streaming and all that. And so they transition into that. But again, it comes down to where you want your skill set to lie and then what you want to be doing. Because another question is, do you want to be on the road or do you want to be, in an office job? Like we have both of those types of positions here. And I think that's why we attract a lot of top talent and we've been getting a lot of VP and above level people here is because people see that we not only have availability to send people out on the road, but we have support roles here at the office that are vice president, even chief level roles that give someone some stability. Our chief revenue officer didn't work a day in his life in the events business, but he knew the principles from another vertical and came over to our business. And the amount of growth we saw was unbelievable. So he had no event experience, but he had experience in his lane and brought that here. And it's just been tremendous. Now, if you want to get into more of those technical roles, like I want to be dealing with audio or lighting or whatever, usually those people have a serious interest in one or many of those things and they cut their teeth in the field as a freelancer before they come on staff.
Yeah, I feel like going back to that word connection, a career path. It's hard when our industry is the foundation of it is so much freelance, right? So much of it we're dependent on a contingent workforce, these freelancers that, there's nothing that connects them different than if they're your full-time employee, right? There's a connection there that's made, a sense of responsibility, partnership, loyalty, whatever you want to call it. And so there's this gap that exists. You've got all these freelancers that want a career path, but there's no sense of ownership, for the lack of a better word, that says, hey, let's do this for you, right? I feel like there's still this gap that exists that lots of people are trying to break in, lots of people are doing the freelance thing. But when it comes to creating stability, consistency, predictability, I think there's still that gap there. So I think we have some work to do. And I love what you also said about your CRO. I think that's something that's also good. I feel like for so long our industry has thought, well, you have to be from the industry to be additive. And sometimes being from the industry can be a disadvantage, right? You know too much, or it's the mindset of it's always been this way versus taking some other outside business principles and applying it to an industry that hasn't really operated so much with those. So I think that's great. I think that's so smart of you to do.
Yeah, I it's been incredible. I mean, his addition, and it wasn't just him, but he had a part in helping us grow another 80% last year. So it is unbelievable. But here's the other thing I want to say about the freelance market. We have to treat the freelancers like they're part of our team. And I'm a huge fan of like, how do we help them feel like they are welcome and they belong and they can be a part of us? So we provide them with swag and we provide them with, if they want to come work here at our office, we have a bunch of like hot desks that they can come and work at. We wanted to create an environment where the freelancer prefers to work with us over our competitor because we're kinder to them. We, in a lot of times we pay them more. I mean, it just comes down to how do you provide a better experience for them and a better interaction? How do you make the freelancer go, I prefer these shows over those shows because it's more organized, the people are nicer, they take care of me. And then of course we throw like a freelancer happy hour for the ones that live here in town.
Yeah.
And
And it's
and
not
so
-10, I'm assuming.
well, I don't know if it was -10 last time, but we invite them out and we treat them to food and
Yeah.
drinks, and we want them to feel like they belong and that they're a part of it. And I gotta tell you, some of our key hires that we've had on staff here who have joined our team full time have been out of the freelancer market where they're like, "Hey, I can make the same amount of money as I was before, but I don't have to have all the risk of worrying about where my next show is gonna come from. And I don't have to worry about systems and keeping up on my softwares and all this stuff. EideCom's gonna do that for me, and I can join their team." So I've had great people join us.
Well, before the show, we had asked you, what is one of your biggest frustrations with the live events industry? And you shared with us that you felt it was inconsistency in the workforce. So tell us a little bit about why it's such a challenge for our industry and any insights that you think, could solve for this.
Okay, I sound like a broken record, but the core values of your business are gonna guide some consistency, right? Freelancers are either gonna go, "I like those values," or "I don't like those values." I gotta tell you, it's helped us let go of a lot of freelancers that were toxic for us and our clients, and it has
I just want to
attracted.
pause there. I hate to interrupt you, but what you just said is really important because so many companies listening right now, they know as soon as you said that, oh, so and so's toxic, they know it, but they don't quite have enough courage to do something about it, right? They know it's toxic. They know it's affecting customer relationships, employee relationships, and they know it, but they continue to just say, but the show can't go on without John or so. I want to pause there. How did you talk to us about the courage or what the impetus was to say, you know what, they're toxic. They could be great. They could be stellar technically, but when they're toxic, there's no room. Talk to us about that.
I'm a product of my environment. I grew up in this industry. I literally came out of high school, started IdeCom, and got my butt kicked for the last 20 years. What that comes down to is I've learned that if I'm a jerk or I'm toxic, I can't get that client to hire me. And so it's trained me, "Hey, you better get your act in order." Well, that is not the case when someone is so high demand because that role, like let's say, lighting designers, really great lighting designers are hard to find, like, and they're few and far between. Well, that means that some of them, because they're in such high demand, they don't have to be nice. They can just be jerks, but because I need their talent, I hire them. I'm going to tell you right now, guys, the worst thing you can do is say, "Hey, they're super talented, but they're toxic and they're terrible on site. They're mean and not friendly, and we all know them." And you hire them anyways because you say that you have to. And I'll tell you what, guys, you're doing the entire industry a disservice by perpetuating that bad behavior, showing people that, hey, you can still be a jerk and get paid. In my opinion, we have to be core values centered and say, "Look, if you're going to be on this team, these are the things." Because you know what? I don't care how talented you are. If you're incredibly talented, but you're a jerk, you're not working for me. You have to be kind, and you have to be positive, creative, effective, and a team player. We had a lighting designer one time say to us, I know the crew call is at 8 a.m., but the show doesn't start until noon. So I'll be here at 11. I've got all my stuff set up. And we were like, whoa, whoa, hold on. The call's at 8. That's when you're here. Nope. I'm not coming at 8. I don't care what you say the crew call is. Show's at noon. I'm going to show up at 11. And we were like, that's not how this goes. And we actually had to let him go right then and there and replace him with somebody else, because it was like, you know what? If it's going to be like that, the client's going to come over and ask for something, and he's going to go, I don't care what you say. This is what I think is better. And it's just not good for anybody.
That to me is the true definition of leadership. Making the tough decisions, knowing what needs to be done, which that's the easy part. But again, having the courage to act on it and figuring it out. So kudos to you. I think that is such a great example of the leadership we need more of. So I
Well,
think
I
that's
appreciate
fantastic.
that. We call those people who are highly talented and so good that you feel like you got to hire them, but they're toxic and terrible for the organization and super selfish. I call those people terrorists, because it's like you feel like you need this person,
They're
but
held
they're a
hostage.
complete
Yeah.
jerk. And so you're being held hostage.
Yeah.
And I call them terrorists because they're
Yeah.
nothing but a pain in the butt for everybody.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we have to stand up to that kind of stuff. And you know what? It's going to make them better too, because they're
Right.
going to leave and go, you know what? I just got fired for being a jerk. Maybe I should not be such a jerk.
Yeah. I've
You
never
know,
been fired. I'm used to kind of calling the shots. Yeah.
yeah,
It
and
takes
that
one sometimes.
same goes for the on-staff people that
Yeah.
you have internally. You gotta do the same thing.
Yep.
Can't allow terrorism in your business for yourself, for your other employees, and your clients, and you know what? If you don't, your good people are gonna leave. "Oh,
Yep.
I'm not
They're
gonna
paying
work."
attention to how you handle
Yeah,
it.
they're gonna be
Absolutely
like,
they
"I'm
are.
not I'm not gonna work an IdeCom show again because I know so and so is gonna be doing audio, and he's such a mean jerk. I hate talking to him. You know what, guys? I'm busy that week. I'm sorry." The good ones are gonna
Yep.
leave you.
That's right. I could talk about this all day, but I'll move on. All right. I typically like to wrap up my show by asking my guests one question, and that is this. What do you hope for the live events industry, or phrased another way, share with us your vision for the live events industry when we're at our best, and what does that look like?
Wow, that's huge. That's a huge loaded question.
I like to ask it from everybody that comes on the show.
My hope for the industry is that we focus on the things that are the most important things, and those are always going to be relational. It's so easy to get excited, especially for those of you that are in the gear side of the business or making gear or selling gear. I got to tell you guys, that doesn't matter. What matters is the connections you make and the connections you keep. And if we get too focused as an industry on, oh, the next trend is VR, so we're going so deep in VR that we forget to look at what is a customer actually asking for. A great example of this is when the Oculus first came out, and I have one sitting here on my desk. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this. This is an Oculus. It's a headset from Facebook. Um, and when it first came out, I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to start making our renderings, and we're going to put them in the Oculus, and then you can put the Oculus on and you can look around. And I was like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. Well, people thought it was cool, but it never won me any work. It
Yeah.
never won me any work. What won the work was going and looking him in the eye and saying, "Hey, I promise you this is gonna go great, and you can trust me, and I
Yeah.
promise I won't let you down." And then you go through with it. And if something
Yeah.
doesn't go right, you get it right and you take care of people. Because you know
Yeah.
what? The events industry there's a lot of transient people coming and going from our business. The people who are gonna last and are going to stay are the people who care about relationships. If we keep it, I don't care, COVID or not, virtual or not, in person or not, we have to care about people. And if we care about people, you're never going to ever worry about, am I going to be successful? Because people are going to look at you and go, you know what? He put the greater good and our needs ahead of maybe what he wanted.
People can get on board with a purpose, something that's bigger than themselves. And I think that it sounds like IdeCom has done such a phenomenal job of creating that environment. So I really appreciate you joining. I think I have a number of takeaways, but when I think about this episode, I think about leadership, and making the tough decisions, getting rid of the terrorists that are out there, as you put it. And what allows you to do that is really kind of creating the core values ahead of time. So, you can more easily spot those that don't carry your values when you know what your values are, and the importance of going through that and creating the culture and giving people all the tools and room to create a creative culture, as you put it. So I think there's just so much that I think we talked about that I think all of us will take with us, as well as those books. I am going to circle back to you, Charles. I'm going to read Traction.
I'm
We're going
telling
to
you,
come back and geek out
traction.
over that.
And you gotta read Amplify Your Influence, because this has to do with how do you get people to actually feel impacted by you. These 2
Yeah.
books, I'm telling you, they'll change your life.
Yeah. Well, everyone has influence over everybody. It's just not always for good, right? You have an influence, you have a reputation. It's just let's make it for something meaningful, right?
Maybe
I
you're a
love that.
terrorist and you don't know it.
That's right. You have a terroristic influence. That's right. Well, this has been great. I really, really appreciate you joining us. For those of you listening, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe. If you have any feedback, comments, or questions, reach out to us at podcast@lasso.io.